of well-intentioned, well-meaning people are going to try to tell you that progressives have to vote for Democrats up and down the ticket in November, because if you don't, a Republican will win. And they love to point to Ralph Nader and his 2000 presidential campaign and how it, in their mind, spoiled the election from Gore. That is not just a lie. That is a damned lie, propagated and perpetuated by the DNC and their cronies and propaganda mouthpieces in the corrupt corporate media for the last 16 years and counting. Here's the real truth of 2000. When the Supreme Court stopped the recount of the election in Florida, Gore was trailing by about 500 votes. DNC mouthpieces, they love to point to the 24,000 votes that Ralph Nader won in Florida, and they claim, based on little evidence and lots of hand-waving, that every one of those votes would have gone to Gore, as opposed to some of them going to Bush, or to other third-party candidates. Or maybe those voters just would have stayed at home had Nader not been on the ballot. But the propaganda outlets don't like to mention the 308,000 registered Democrats in the state of Florida who voted for George W. Bush in 2000. Only sometimes do they mention that Florida's Secretary of State, Katherine Harris, was Bush's campaign manager in Florida, and that his brother, Jeb, was sitting governor at the time. Two big conflicts of interest. And they don't ever mention, or rarely attribute, the election results to confusing butterfly ballots, or hanging chads, or other various allegations of election irregularities in Florida during the 2000 election. And they don't like to mention that Gore's campaign was lackluster and inspiring, and he lost not only his home state of Tennessee, but also the state of New Hampshire. And if he had won either of those two states, he would have won the presidency. Of course, Mr. Gore, if the recount had gone to completion instead of being stopped by the Supreme Court, also would have won that way. The DNC loves to point to all the environmental and progressive work that Mr. Gore has done since 2000, spreading awareness of the threat of climate change and the consequences if we do not adjust our present course immediately. I applaud and respect him for all the work that he's done on this issue. But the DNC doesn't point out that in 2000, Gore was a member of the DLC, the Democratic Leadership Council, and the so-called Third Way Democrats, a subset of the Democratic Party which embraced pro-business neoliberalism, not anything remotely resembling progressive values. And not only that, but Gore chose the furthest right running mate that he possibly could have gotten away with, Connecticut Senator Joe Lieberman. And I think many of us know that Joe Lieberman most certainly would have been Gore's Cheney in beating the drums of war after 9/11 should their ticket have won the 2000 election. Instead, what the DNC does is what they've been doing ever since and what they've done a long time before that. They scapegoat the only progressive candidate and refuse to admit fault that it was their own flawed candidate that lost the election. Now, if the DNC were truly worried about a third-party candidate, they should have and could have been moving heaven and earth to implement alternative voting systems that don't have the same problems as winner-take-all elections. And yet, even in states with a Democratic trifecta, where the state house, state senate, and governor are all under Democratic control, not a single state has implemented an alternative voting system. Here in the state of Arizona, 3 years ago in 2013, there was a bill to implement approval voting, a massive improvement on winner-take-all elections that we currently have. Every Democrat in the chamber stood up and with one voice, voted against HB 2518. Their manufactured reason aside, I think that this raises some major cause for concern and shows a very distinct lack of intellectual honesty by the Democratic Party. So, the next time somebody tells you that voting green is a spoiler, stand up proudly against the Democratic propaganda armed with facts and truth. And please also lend me your support in the Arizona State House of Representatives race in District 3. Together, we can break the back of the two-party machine. I'm Edward Cizek, and I approve this message.